When I was very young, my father was studying for his higher nationals, and he had a lot of textbooks around the house. And I found the fly sheets of these were just pristine, wonderful sketch pads. So at the ages of 3, 4, 5, 6, I used to use these as my sketchbooks and drew lovely pictures of anything that I really wanted to express. I was very lucky at school that in the sixth form I went to a weekend course where I learnt to stitch. And this gave me an extra dimension because I was actually playing with fabric, which is just such a wonderful thing to do, and I hadn't really experienced that before. And if we then jump forward to a visit to France, when I saw Tapestries for the first time and was not just enchanted by the fact that they were massive and they had wonderful texture and colour, I was also fascinated by the fact that the borders were full of rich designs of fruit and flowers and foliage, and it was those borders that interested me far more than any of the allegorical scenes that were in the rest of the painting, the tapestry. So when I came back, I'd been painting as a hobby on small objects, boxes and tiny containers of all sorts, and I thought I'm going to go bigger. And my husband found an old piece of door panelling which I painted as a long tapestry border, and one of these appeared in World of Interiors, and it was at this point that Hugh Ehrman looked at World of Interiors and said, "This woman might like to try to design a needlepoint for me." I, in the meantime, and this is fate, had seen an article about Hugh Ehrman and his business in one of the Sunday papers, and I thought, do you know, I think I could do that. So I telephoned and he said, "Do you know, this is strange, I've got a letter on the typewriter to you." And as one American magazine said, it was meant to be. The first design that I did was a fairly traditional tapestry fragment. Historically, tapestries have been cut up for thrifty reasons, to make little panels to go over cracks, to make cushions from, to make table carpets from. And I took the idea of a tapestry border that had been cut up and pieced together, and that made my first cushion. After that, my work developed in a much more naturalistic way. And instead of just thinking of these stylized flowers, I went on to re-examine nature itself, as I always had done when I was walking, when I was rambling, when I was blackberry picking, which was one of my favourite pursuits as a child. And gradually this horizontal idea evolved as a ramble along a hedgerow. And so you'll find a lot of my cushions have intertwining fruit, blackberries, rose hips, crab apples, anything that you'd find within a hedgerow. And the magical thing is that hedgerows change. That's the wonderful inspiration of nature. It doesn't let you become idle. It always drives you forward because it's always changing. And therefore the hedgerow is different in the spring, in the summer, in the autumn and in the winter. And I try to reflect that in all of my work and try to get across this idea of wonderment, this idea that that is there for us to look at. Why don't we see it? Why don't we just stop and not walk past it, but actually engage with it? It's difficult to say I have a design process because really it's just an expression of what I have seen. I usually capture it with a camera because, as I've said, nature changes, the light changes, the mood changes. So I bring my photographs back to the studio, I'll look over them, and already there's an idea formed, because just by actually framing something that you've seen, you're automatically imposing some sort of order on it. I'll sort of put it into the oven of my mind and bake it for a little while, because I'm always thinking about how I'm going to recreate the visual images that are going around inside my mind or that I've caught on my photograph. And I'll make a sketch. What I'll probably do is to do my sketch really heavily, put the canvas over it and draw, almost like tracing the design onto the canvas. Because the one thing I hate about canvas, and I'm sorry about that, it's the regimented geometric shape of it. And somehow I've got to get these curling tendrils and these beautifully hanging leaves or opening flowers into this rigid grid. And that can be done only by eye and hand. My use of colour is really interesting in that I started by painting on wood because it gave me muted colours, and I think that captured Ehrman's imagination too, because he saw the parallel between that and the faded richness of old tapestries. So my first cushions emulated faded tapestries. They used very soft muted colours, and obviously the leaves in them were all blue. People often ask why are the leaves blue, but if you look at ancient tapestries, the yellow dye that was mixed with blue to produce green leaves is a fugitive dye, so yellow fades, leaving the blue, and therefore the blue leaves. Also, anything that's red tends to fade to a brownish pink, and that is what I was trying to capture originally in my painted panels and subsequently in the needlepoint designs. I think if people just click a button, they're missing a wonderful physical experience, because if you have a piece of clay in your hands, or a piece of wood, or a pencil, or a paintbrush, or a needle and thread, you are relating to something sensually that's very tactile. And to actually work with that is a huge privilege, really. And it's also a huge pleasure. And I think a lot of people don't realise, because they're too frightened, they think that an artist is someone who lives in an ivory tower sitting on a pedestal and has some special gift. And I don't think that's true. There's a creative element in everyone, and it just needs drawing out. And a lot of it is giving that person confidence and giving them some materials that inspire them.